Okay, the first thing we're going to do is look at simple in-betweening. So here we have a basic pendulum swing. It swings from one side to the other, and to do that I have two key positions that represent the extremes of that movement, one to the left and one to the right. The drawing to the left is drawing number 1 and the one to the right is drawing number 17. The first thing we have to do is start putting in-between drawings to create that movement between the two extremes. So what I'm going to do is what is known as the breakdown position, which is the one in the middle. I have a little chart up at the top and it shows a number of in-betweens that I want. If you look at them, they're regular in-betweens. The one in the middle I've numbered number 9. So we're doing breakdown drawing number 9. To do that, we put the light box on, put both drawings on the pegs, the registration pegs above, and mark the pivot point of the pendulum swing. This has to be perfectly aligned every time, otherwise it will wiggle around, so you have to make sure it's exactly in the right position. Then I'll take a straight edge and draw a vertical line, because as these are very symmetrical left and right, the obvious in-between or breakdown position will be vertical in the middle. So now we do a thing called superimposing. We take both key positions off the pegs, we superimpose one over the other, make sure the pivot position's lined up, make sure the ball or the head of the pendulum is lined up, and then we superimpose our guides of the breakdown drawing. So we line up the pivot position and we line up the stem, and then we can actually check off the center of the ball of the pendulum, and using a circle guide, and I always use a circle guide for circles because it's easier and quicker, it guarantees a perfect circle every time, and if you can use them, why not? So we trace the head of the pendulum, and when we've done that we do a double check, we put everything back on the pegs again, make sure they're all registered again, and check that everything's in line, which it looks like it's in perfect alignment. And then what I'll do is I'll just strengthen up the stem of the pendulum yet again from the pivot point to the head, and that should get us there. Switch the backlights off and realign them on the pegs, so you put them in order, so the lowest number's on top, 1 is on top, 9 is underneath, and then 17 is on the bottom. And then if you start to roll these, or flip them as I prefer to call it, you begin to see a pendulum swing. So first in-between done, or the breakdowns more specifically done, we want to put more in-betweens in along the way. So there we have 9, we want to put the other in-betweens in. 9 was between 1 and 17, so now we have to do is the drawing between 1 and 9, which is number 5. So to do number 5, we first write number 5 onto the paper, put the paper back on the pegs, and then put the light box on. Now mark off the pivot position and the approximate center position of the shaft of the pendulum, and again we draw a guideline to indicate where we want that positioned. We take it off the pegs and we superimpose one over the other, so we're putting drawing 1 and 9 over one another, and getting them perfectly aligned, and then adding our new in-between, which is number 5, over them, superimpose it in such a way that they line up perfectly. Again, make sure the pivot point's in the right position and the shaft of the pendulum is all lined up with the other two. And again, we can draw the head of our pendulum using the circle guide. Okay, put them back on the pegs, have a quick rudimentary look. Yes, it looks like it's in a good position, so we can strengthen up the line of the stem of the pendulum and make it appear clearer. And yes, with the lights off, it's a nice strong drawing. And again, we can flip or roll the drawings to see it moving. So the order I'd flip, this is a technique, is 1, 5, 9. 1, 5, 9. 1, 5, 9. And if you look at it, you can get a sense of the movement if you go fast. Okay, a perfect test. So the next thing we do is now we're happy that this is moving, we begin to build up all the rest of the in-between. So we want to put between 1 and 5, we need to do drawing number 3. So between 1 and 5, we need to draw number 3. Again, it's the same process. You take a fresh sheet of paper, put the number on, number 3, put it on the pegs, put the light box on, mark the pivot position, make it accurate, mark the center of the shaft where you think that's going to be, draw your line, your guideline all the way through, and again we superimposed. As before, put it back on the pegs, double check everything with the light box on, make sure it's all lined up, and then just strengthen any lines that need to be strengthened before you do the final flipping test. Okay, so there's our final in-between 3. The last stage of the process is now to actually do all the in-betweens and have all the positions from 1 through 17 on odd numbers, so that we can complete our pendulum swing. And then once we've completed that pendulum swing, we can then test it and see what it looks like. To modify the pendulum swing from a standard even in between generic way of moving to a much more sophisticated way, a more natural way of moving, we need to look at the chart. And so to do this, if you remember, the more drawings there are in animation, the slower the action is going to be. So if you bunch up more in-betweens towards one end than the other and have less drawings in the middle, that means it's going to start slow, go faster, and go slower again. And then as the pendulum swings back, it's going to accelerate and then decelerate. And this is what it looks like when you shoot it as a pencil test.